So the Great Pyramid stands on latitude 30 degrees north. This is not a random latitude, of course. It's 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. According to Egyptologists, it is a random latitude. Everything about the Great Pyramid is random because it was created by semi-savages who were incapable of thinking logically about anything. So it's an accident that it's situated on latitude 30 degrees north. It's also a kind of accident as well that it's just almost perfectly aligned to true north, within 3/60ths of a single degree. This is one of the reasons why I don't feel I need aliens to explain the Great Pyramid. Because aliens who had the technology to cross interstellar space would have the technology to align this monument perfectly to true north. It's almost perfect. It's incredibly good workmanship. As human workmanship go, it's uncannily good. But I don't think it's interstellar space technology. Likewise, the side lengths of the Great Pyramid vary by as much as 7 inches. That across 750 feet isn't much either. But again, if you were interstellar traveling aliens and you built this, I think you would get it spot on. I think it bears all the hallmarks of human workmanship of a very advanced level, much more advanced than history gives credit for in the epoch of 2500 BC. So it's just 3/60ths of a degree off true north across that whole 13-acre footprint. And it really takes astronomy to align the monument that precisely. It tells us that the builders were astronomers. This I went into in Fingerprints of the Gods. I think it's highly significant that that the dimensions of the Earth are built into the dimensions of the Great Pyramid on a scale of 1 to 43,200. Again, Egyptologists are aware of this, and again, in their way, they say that it's a total coincidence and it has no meaning whatsoever. But if you take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. And if you measure accurately the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. And it's interesting that Isaac Newton in the 1600s had an intuition, or perhaps it was based on his studies of ancient texts, that the dimensions of the Earth were coded in the Great Pyramid. And he sent John Greaves from Oxford to measure the Great Pyramid at that time on the assumption that they could scale up the Great Pyramid and get the dimensions of the Earth. John Greaves was not able to do an accurate measurement because the pyramid was covered to a great height in sand at that point. But it's interesting that Isaac Newton had that idea. Certainly in 2500 BC, when this monument is supposed to have been built, it is held by mainstream academics that nobody had knowledge of the dimensions of the Earth. Indeed, did not even know that we lived on a planet. But there you go. In all the centuries of darkness, when we did not know the dimensions of the Earth, and indeed didn't know that we lived on a planet, if you really, all you had to do was measure the Great Pyramid, scale it up by 43,200, and you would get precisely a printout of the dimensions of our planet. It's one of the ways, along with that orientation to true north, that the Great Pyramid speaks to the planet on which it is placed. I don't think it's coincidental at all, because this is not at all a random number. This is a highly significant number, and it belongs to a sequence of numbers that themselves relate to a key motion of the Earth, and that motion is the precession of the equinoxes. And again, I went into this at great length in Fingerprints of the Gods, and indeed had to teach myself astronomy and mathematics in order to write Fingerprints of the Gods, because that's one of the things the Great Pyramid does. If you really get into studying it, it starts initiating you into learning stuff that you don't know before. It is an initiatory device. At any rate, the precession is thought to be caused by a wobble on the axis of the Earth, caused by the competing gravities of the Sun and the Moon. My friend Walter Cruttenden, who runs the Binary Research Institute, has a different explanation. He thinks that it's because our solar system is in orbit around the star Sirius, and that the great circle in the heavens that our sun makes as it travels around the star Sirius would produce the same observable as the wobble on the axis of the Earth that is hypothesized by geographers today. But let's just go with the wobble theory for the moment, and what it is, it's rather like a spinning top, which when it's slowing down begins to do this, and what it means is it's most observable at the pole star. Today our pole star is Polaris. That's the star that the north pole of the Earth points almost perfectly at, not quite. But there have been other times in history, over a great cycle of 25,920 years, when the pole star has been another star, or indeed when the pole is pointed at a blank area of empty space. It's observable there, and it's observable on the horizon, particularly at the equinoxes, also at the solstices, at any time of year actually, but on those key moments of year. The background stars that rise behind the sun on those key moments of the year shift very gradually in, again, this great cycle that takes 25,920 years to complete, and that was referred to as the Great Year by the ancients. And that cycle operates at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. And if you take 360 and multiply that by 72, you get 25,920, which is the entire cycle of the Great Year, when the clock resets and starts again from the place it was 25,920 years before. And that ratio, 43,200, is based on the number 72. It's exactly 600 times the number 72. So I would say if the ratio was 1 to 57,815, it would be less impressive than it is at 1 to 43,200, because that is a significant ratio relating to a key motion of the Earth itself. And furthermore, it belongs to a series of numbers that are found in ancient mythology all around the world. 72 is the heartbeat of the cycle, but you find these numbers related to 72. 72 divided by 2 is 36, 72 plus 36 is 108, half of 108 is 54, 108 times 2 is 216, 72 times 30 degrees in each house of the zodiac is 2,160, and so on and so forth, 4,320, 43,200. You can add zeros, but basically what you're doing is you're building a whole sequence of numbers based on the precessional cycle. These numbers are found all over the famous Mayan calendar. They're a central feature of the number system of the Mayan calendar. They are found in ancient mythology all around the world. It was proposed by Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschend. Giorgio de Santillana was the professor of the history of science at MIT. I highly recommend his book, Hamlet's Mill. It's a mind-bending book. It requires incredible dedication to read and to study it. I think that just as he was speaking of an ancient code, he also encoded his key message in that book in very abstruse language, because he realized that he was sitting on academic dynamite. And what he was saying was and he does say it actually in plain words at one point in the footnote in the text, that his explanation for this is that the precession was completely observed and understood by some almost unbelievable ancestor civilization of remote antiquity. That's what he says. And that they chose, that for some reason it was so important to them that they chose to encode it in myth and in architecture, and that their belief was that if they encoded it in good enough mythological stories, the storyteller did not need to know the essence of the information he or she was transmitting. All they needed to do was tell the story true, and the information would be carried down the generations in this way, and thus preserved for the future, for a time when, again, people might understand the precession of the equinox.